You've had some deep understandings about going through the veil. Tell us what you've come to know.
What I realize is that I'm a master, and we are all masters, but we have to wake up to know it. And what we are mastering is our thoughts and feelings, our fears, the body, all the elements.
Yeah. Every exalted teacher that's ever walked the earth has said the same thing. Jesus said, all of you can do as I've done and more. And, you know, Sai Baba, who was some big guru in India, said the same thing. He used to produce miracles, and he used to say, he said, we are all God. The only difference between you and I is that I know it and you've forgotten. Yeah. So we're all the creator. We're the creative power. Yeah. And waking up to that, you know, having that as an intellectual exercise, you can chew on that. But really knowing that in your life, different, really different. Yeah. Yeah. So how has it been? How does that look, that sort of dropping into that space?
It's the mind is more quiet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't delve into thoughts and feelings. I just let them pass through me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to. I can choose what I want to collect, but I don't hold on to anything, not even joy or love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an energetic vessel that channels the energies through me and out. As soon as I hold on to one feeling, I'm in trouble.
Mm-hmm. How so? Do you want to explain that a bit more?
Because if I want to hold on to it, I am not I am not free.
Right. Yeah.
To be free is to let everything go.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said, Sissel. Yeah, if we hold on to something, it's fear, right? It says it's not going to come back. It's like what we do with boyfriends or lovers or money or something, you know, like we think, I've got this, now I have to keep it because it's not going to come again, which is not true because it all flows. Yeah. So it comes, it goes, it comes. You know, I had a girlfriend who, she married a very rich man, and she went from very poor to very rich, but she was a master in her own right. She had this knowing. She enjoyed life to the max, and she had this knowing that life was this playground. And I was struggling with money. And she said to me that they're on a trip and that she had lost the camera and she'd lost something like $2,000. And to me, who didn't have any money, I'm like, oh, you know, like that's the worst thing that I could use. And she goes, easy come, easy go. And that's, you know, easy come, easy go. And she just had that embodiment of it comes, it goes. Yes. It's just that flow that you're talking about comes through me.
And that's why she attracted a rich man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I did the same, but I let him go.
Easy come, easy go. There's another one around the corner. But then the man doesn't have to be the vortex through which your abundance flows. You are. And I think that for her, because she was with the man had the money and she didn't, I think that was the struggle for her too, to not be that vortex through which, you know, to have it come from him and not come through her own being. Like she wanted to be a businesswoman. And so it's a long story. I'll tell it one day. I have to write a movie about it because it's you know, he
just going to say that if we need some other outside ourselves, it's because we don't believe in ourselves.
Absolutely.
But we have everything we need. We don't need a bunch. We need what we need.
What you said, Sissel, you can't, like nothing, everything passes, you know, and and you have to kind of be okay with that, but it's hard.
That is, yes, that is the mastery we're doing here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To become masters, to be initiated, to go further on. When we master something,
Yeah.
it crystallize.
Yeah.
And then you go a little bit further, and little by little, we expand. Because the mind, what I have really understood is that we find ourselves between the feelings and between the words, in the tiny pause that is between everything.
Right.
And when we start to access that little tiny spot, that will start to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And then we become more and more aligned with the soul and who we are.
Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah, it's only the ego self, the linear mind, that wants to hang on, because the linear mind believes that what we've created, the creation, our creation, which is our life, is our true self or our true reality. And the soul self or the higher self understands that it is a creation of our making that we can mold, and it's our creation. It's not who we are, it's what we've made, it's what we've created. And who we are is that higher self, that God essence, that God presence that has created many worlds and many lives, like all happening simultaneously. And like you're not the cake, you're the creator of the cake. You know what I mean? You're not the painting, you're the creator of the painting.
Right.
Well, it's interesting.
I'm like really embarrassed that you say that.
when you're in that altered state, when you're more connected to your higher self, you're not so present to, like, you're not in your linear logical mind, you're in sort of like an expanded mindset, and so your focus is more out there than like on the details of the, you know, the third dimensional world. And I was having a conversation last weekend with a young couple, beautiful young couple that were on retreat with me, and talking about being on community radio and thinking that I could never manage, like, sort of being in that expanded mindset, like channeling, and then coming back down to the panel and putting up and down volume and putting on commercials and putting on songs, you know, using a panel, a radio panel live on air, and then tuning into my guest, and then sort of seeing sort of spirit talking to them, and like have those two different mindsets. I thought, this is not going to happen. How? Because normally, because it was community radio, so no one was paying us, but normal radio stations, you've got someone who does the panel and you just yak. You know, most radio presenters who are paid just yak, and they're free to do anything. But when you're on community, you're doing all. But you know what? I actually could do it. And it was a real lesson in how incredible you are. Like Cecil was saying, we are masters. We are masters of. And actually, when we had Penny Kelly on the Inner Sanctum recently, she was talking, I think it was Penny Kelly or one of them, was talking about how we can be in several brainwaves simultaneously. Like science will say you're either in an alpha, delta, theta brainwave, you know, and when you're asleep, you're in theta, and when you're meditating, you're in alpha, and when you're in your logical mind, you're in, alpha, beta. Beta's the, and so they speak about it in these, and linearly like this, but actually, no. You can be in several different brainwaves simultaneously, like different parts of your brain are doing different things. And that community radio really taught me about that, because we are amazing. We can do incredible things. So we can be cooking the dinner and channeling, you know, Andrew, if you like. And talking to
if I could run.
It's interesting because I think what happens, like the thing about teachers that teach you about meditation, most people are in the monkey mind, which is, the monkey mind is the mind that's trying to figure something out or get something. So the monkey mind is trying to figure something out. So it's trying to get an answer or it's trying to, or it's in desire. It's like, how do I get what I want? How, why, how, right? Whereas the mind is still engaged when we are in a different brainwave, when we're communicating with our guides or God or our higher self or dead relatives or whatever, whoever or whatever, or a higher frequency, a higher form of consciousness. I don't even like the word higher. A different form of consciousness. That's a better word. It's a better word.
Oh, that is better.
It's not higher or lower. It's just a different frequency. And what people, and I've heard, you know, like Laura has said, you know, I don't speak to my guides. I don't speak to my guides. You know, so many people say this. And we do, because it's just a continuum of the conversation that we have in our heads, but we don't distinguish it between the monkey mind that says how, why, and the continue of the conversation that is like, it's like the listening. It's like the ego asks and the guidance answers. And so, you know, if we are receiving answers, then we are receiving guidance. And different levels of guidance, they're saying, different levels of guidance. But just to be present to that. So a lot of people teach you to meditate or Reiki or whatever, and they ask you to still the mind. You can't still the mind. You don't still the mind. So it's just a different frequency. I remember a Buddhist monk who had meditated for 30 years. He was asked by an interviewer, how long do you have no thought in all the time of you meditated, in all those 30 years? Where you've received, like you've just had absolutely no thought? And he said about 2 minutes in 30 years. And so it's not, the goal is not to have no thought. The goal is to have different thought. So the different thought is a thought of peace, love, imagination, where you go off and you see different lands. You know, it's those thoughts of, it's the answers to your questions. Like it's like, oh, wow, yeah, wow. It's those aha moments, but you're thinking. And so the ego is asking, and then there's that letting go, coming back to what Sissel is talking about, that letting go, allowing the answer, not hanging on to the question, like I need to know. So when you have a question and then you don't need to know and you let the question go, that allows you to raise to the frequency of the answer. And that's what guidance is. That's what guidance is. With Esther and Jerry, for instance, Esther and Jerry Hicks, the teachings of Abraham, Jerry was so full of questions about life, love, and the universe, but his questions were he was so passionate about his questions that he didn't have space for the answer, because he was like, but why, but how, but what about that, and what about that, and what about that, and what about that? Whereas Esther was in that place of allowing the answers, because she didn't care. Like, she's like, it doesn't matter, don't worry, isn't it a beautiful day? You know, like she's just in the moment. So the combination of the allowing and the questioner came together and produced Abraham. And so as Esther started to tune into Abraham, Jerry's questions were drawing this information through Esther. So his questions were summoning the energy. So it was this fabulous combination of the questioner summoning the energy and the energy coming to answer. So as singular beings, not the Jerry and Esthers of the world, this is what we do with ourselves. Our questions summon, and then we have to let go and be in that place of allowing, be in that, doesn't matter if I know or not, like, it's a nice day, isn't it a beautiful day? Esther says, pat the cat, pat the dog, you know, be in that place of allowing what you've summoned to flow through you, to come to you and to flow through you. And that's what guidance is, to ask the question and then let it go and allow the answer to flow through. Yeah. And then, as you were talking, Sissel, you know, when it flows through, I think that to share what you've received allows it to flow, not just through you, but through you and out to the rest of humanity, to share what you've got, even when people think you're crazy. Did I tell you all that I was at a funeral recently? was a mother of a friend of mine who had had dementia, and she was very wealthy, and it's very eastern suburbs, you know, Sydney. And so all these sort of la-di-da people there. And there was this one woman talking to me. She kind of had a bit of a nun energy to her. She's sort of very straight-laced, corporate, but looked very nunnish. I don't know. She was very straight-laced, but had a big personality. And we were chatting away and talking about dementia and being in, you know, in that place and in the end of your life. And I said, you know, somebody like that, when they reemerge, it's like they have the biggest orgasm of their life. This woman just looked at me, her eyes wide, and she said, "What did you just say?"
She's like, "What's an orgasm?"
No, sorry, my nose is running, my right nostril's running. And I just thought there was something in me where my ego mind was going, "Did you really say that?" But there was some like, just really, I don't know. I couldn't believe I said it. And I said, "Oh yeah, you know, like dying when you're in that place of like old and sick and like really limited, the most limited you could be, and your mind's gone and everything, and you're released from that. When you die, you're released from the body, you're released from your mind. It's like this freedom. It's like the biggest orgasm you'll ever have in your life." And she's going, "How do you know?" And I said, "I speak to dead people all the time." And, you know, she's kind of going, "You speak to dead people?" And I had said that to a few people at this funeral, because I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to go into this, "Oh, it's so sad, Claude, you're terrible." But when you go to a funeral when someone's very old and very sick and has had dementia and been in a home for years, it's not as sad as if, you know, someone like Andrew who's young. But at the same time, I just think we just got to make light of the death thing, because for them, it is like this huge release. Somebody said it's like taking off a tight shoe. It's just like, oh, it's just a release from the limitation and the tightness of this body and this mind that we wear. But can we, you know, reach to experience that while we're wearing the mind and the body? Can we have that sense of freedom and release and relief? That's the journey, really, for all of us left here on this earth to continue this journey.
Maybe she needed to be reminded to let go and have fun.
I was telling my girlfriend about that, and I said it was her cousin, and she said, "Oh, she would have loved that," because she's got quite a big personality, a big sort of rambunctious personality, although it was totally outside of her paradigm. It was just something shocking like that was something that my friends thought that she would appreciate. You know, it wasn't normal conversation. It was something quite shocking.
Monkey mind. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but
yeah, you are. I think that thought, as we understand it as linear third dimensional human beings, is mostly wrapped up with desire. So questions and want. And that is the predominant thought. Yeah, and I think that when they say quieten your mind, it's quietening the questions.
And listening for the answer.
Yeah, and just it's being detached from wanting to know the answer. This is the I can't think of the word, you know, like you want to know the answer, but you have to reach a point of not wanting to know the answer to receive the answer. It's kind of crazy, but it's that detachment from needing to know, which was my journey, because I was just so full. I used to be the Jerry, right? Full of questions. And every time I used to go to a guru or a reader, they would say it in a roundabout way, but they would always say, "Oh, you've got such a strong mind, a strong mind, a strong mind, a strong mind, you know, quieten your mind, quieten your mind." And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And what they were trying to say was, you know, let go of the need to know the question, like the answers to your questions, because I was just so full of questions. Am I doing your head in, Laura?
No, I know. I know I need to be hearing this, and I'm like, oh God, I need to know.
Yeah, but I love I love the questions because the questions summon the answers. So the questions summon the guides, if you like, or the answers. They summon the energy that comes to answer. So it's having the questions, but letting go of the need to know the answers. Because and I've seen this with you, Laura, too. When you're in that vibration of the question, no answer will satisfy you.
Yeah.
It's right. It's like you'll ask me and I'll tell you, and you'll go, well, maybe I should do that healing or read that book or maybe have a healing with him or her or him. And what about, can you recommend somebody else, Karen? It's like the answer will come. You'll have a question and I'll tell you the answer and you'll go, do you think I should have a session with the other person? Because you can't hear the answer while you're in the vibration of the question, even when the answer comes. So in order to receive, you have to be out of the you have to be out of the question. Yeah.
But I'm glad that you mentioned this because I was looking at your website earlier and I was thinking, looking at the prices that you charge, which are very good. But I mean, isn't that sort of what you do? Is that sort of coaching for people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that like the most of what you do? Because obviously people, I mean, I'm definitely now in a spot where I need help with that. But is that what you do to, as a coach, help people?
Yeah, I pretty much do the same thing that I'm doing here, but it's just more personal.
It's
Don't let you get away with too much because our ego mind wants to weevil out. Our ego mind wants to be right. It wants to stay in the questions. It wants to weevil out of things. It wants to be right. So coming back to what Cecil said right at the beginning, it's like letting go of the need to know. It does allow that energy to flow through you because we hang on to the need to know. We hang on to so much.
Letting go of the need to know lets the energy flow. There
you go. You're a poet, you don't know. Write that down. Letting go of the need to know.
I'm going to. I'm going to type it down.
And he said, choose love, not fear. And I remember just thinking about that for years until I finally understood it. Like, I mean, maybe it was months, but it seemed like it was a long time. I was like, choose love, not fear. And yeah.
That is most definitely the challenge, because the ego is in fear pretty much most of the time. One of the most enlightening things I ever heard, which I speak about a lot, was Scarlett Lewis, who lost her little son in the Sandy Hook shootings. When I had the conversation with her on the show, and I put her chapter in the first book too, she said that in her grief, she realized that her biggest fear was realized, and that was the senseless murder of her beautiful 5-year-old son. It was like, I think a mother's fear, the biggest fear is that the safety of their children. So her 5-year-old son is mercenarily, senselessly shot by a crazy person. And so she was in this place of grief, and she realized her biggest fear had been realized. And when she had that realization, she realized that she had no fear in that moment. And then in that moment of having no fear, she had something like an embodied life review. Oh, now I remember what I was going to say before. I'll get back to it. The life review. And so she was in her body, and then she started to look back on her life. Her whole life sort of opened up before her when she was in this, I call it a place of grace, when she had this realization that she had no fear left because she was living her greatest fear, so there was nothing else to fear. And she saw that pretty much every thought she'd ever had been based in fear. She just saw how fear had completely run her life. Until that moment, she was completely oblivious to that, because fear was just such a constant. It was such a default setting. It was such a normal default setting. And as she's telling me, I'm thinking, okay, she's just a mom running a business. She's got a farm. She's got a couple of kids. Like, what's she got to be fearful about? But it's those little thoughts like, am I going to be late? Am I doing it right? Am I a good enough mother? You know, what do those people think of me? You know, will I get this right? It's those little thoughts that are constantly criticizing ourselves. Am I good enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I thin enough? Am I rich enough? You know, it's just that constant mind chatter. And we live inside this bubble of this fear and we don't even realize it. And she said that she had that realization that she'd just lived in fear her whole life until the greatest fear manifested, and then she realized, you know, there was nothing else to fear. There's nothing else to fear. It's already happened. And she said that it's funny because it happened inside grief. For about 8 months, she lived in this state of grace where she had no fear. She had no fear, like nothing mattered anymore. Like it didn't matter that she didn't look good or that, you know, she was late or, you know, it just didn't matter anymore. It's kind of like maybe grief does that to you too. When you've realized your biggest fear, it's like all that little stuff that you think matters doesn't matter anymore. And she said that after about 8 months, a little thought crept in. She went out there and started becoming this force of nature where she was bringing awareness to choose love. Like she forgave the shooter and she wanted to choose love over fear. Like that's her program, the Jessie Lewis Choose Love program. And now she's putting that program in schools. It's called the enrichment program, teaching children to choose, you know, love over fear and to stop bullying in schools and blah, blah, blah. So she's a force of nature, this woman, let me tell you. But she's Scarlett Lewis.
Scarlett Lewis.
I'll send you the information.
Okay.
She had a little thought that she was out in the world doing so much and just powering through it because no fear. She just didn't have any fear anymore. She didn't care what people thought about her. She didn't care if she upset the apple cart. She didn't care if what she said people didn't believe her or, you know, because like, how could you forgive somebody that shot 20 children? You can't, you know, like she's out there in the world preaching love to people who don't want to hear it. It's like, and she didn't care. She had no fear. But she had this little thought that dropped in that said, oh, I hope my older son, because she had another son, is not being neglected because I'm out there doing all this stuff. And that was a fearful thought. And she said once she had that little thought that dropped in, she kind of crashed down to earth and she went back into that default mindset. So she said she had about 8 months of this place of grace. Peace. Yeah. And
Did she
then
get back up there?
Yeah, well, then she had to manage that. So now she's sort of dropped back into the default mindset of, I hope everyone's, you know, that's the real mother mindset. Got to look after everybody. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? It's sort of like, I've got to make sure everybody. It's funny. That's a kind of place of fear too, because God would say everybody's connected to source energy. They're fine. Let them live their life and stop fussing. You know what I mean? Like that would be what love would say. And fear would say, but I've got to look after everybody. You know, like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? It looks like love, but it's really fear.
Yes.
Right?
God, that resonates with me.
And, you know, I had that lesson with my daughter when she was going through her dark night of the soul and she had the boyfriend and they were screaming at each other, beating each other up. And then they were screaming at me and beating me up. And it was all bloody chaos. And I just kept asking my guides, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because she was hating me, saying, I hate you. I'm a failure. And nothing I could say, I couldn't get through to her. And they just said, leave her alone and let her have her process. Let her live her life. Her soul is choosing to go through this. I said, okay, I get that. We all have to go through our dark night of the soul. We all have to challenge our stressful thought. We all have to do that. But how can I help? And they just said, just keep reminding her that you love her and that you're there for her. And it's like, that's all you can do. And just let her have her process. Don't try and fix her. Don't try and save her. You know, don't try and fix her. Just let her live her process and remind her that you're there for her. And so I went through that for about 2 years, and it was really hard. Because the contrast is there for us to give birth to desire. And so it's like this catch-22. It's like we have to formulate the question or the desire and then let go of needing to know in order to have the, it seems like this crazy game that we're playing, but there we go. We experience contrast, which is pain or trauma or illness or death or whatever we perceive as not good in our world, and or negative emotion. And then from that contrast, we give birth to desire. I want to feel better. I want to know more. Like the questions for me when my mum died was, where did she go? And then the question was, well, if she went somewhere, then she came from somewhere, and where is that place? And, you know, through the grief and the death process, these questions arise. And then it took about 20 years for me to calm down to be able to receive the answers, because I was still all in the question. Where, why, where, why? And
you had to live your life and have your experiences before diving into it and understand
exactly.
it. So
yeah,
it's all perfect.
Yeah, it's all perfect. I know. We don't like to see that contrast is perfect, or that drama or trauma or pain is perfect. But in that, it's, Esther says, you know, it's just a powerful step one process. And the step one process is ask. The step two process is orchestrate the details. And the step three process is allow. So we need all those three processes, but the orchestration, funnily enough, is not our job. It's the job of the universe, the job of the higher or broader consciousness, expanded consciousness is the orchestration, or law of attraction is doing the orchestrating, is putting people and situations in place to bring the answers that you're seeking. But as I was saying before, even when you're still in the vibration or the mode of the question, when you're still in the step one process, even when the universe orchestrates the details to bring you what you're asking for, if you don't move to the step three process, which is allow, which is pat the cat, let go, detachment, so many words for it. If you're not in that relaxed, I don't care attitude, I don't really need to know then you can't receive. You can't receive what you've asked for, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Yeah. So it's letting go of the need to know. Yeah. So,
you know
what I'm getting as I'm listening to this is it's all a matter of perception, because we perceive this reality through our five senses, right? So we taste and we touch and we see and we hear and we feel, and then we call it reality. But reality is reality, whether we perceive it through our five senses or other senses or our other senses. But when you start to give more attention to your other senses, then that other reality starts to become as real as this reality. It's just a perceptual experience. Like life continues. It's really interesting. I'm just having all these aha moments as I'm thinking about this or listening to you. It's like when somebody moves from a physical body into a spiritual body, for a better word, it's just a perceptual experience. To them, they can see us and perceive us as real, as real, as real, as real. And so to them, they're looking at us, they could touch us, they can see us, they can smell us, everything. But to us, because we're locked into five senses, we no longer perceive them, right? But they're right there. So they're having the reality of being with us, but we're not having the reality of being with them. It's a bit like when I was really going at Garnet last time and asking him to explain what it was like when he was in his astral body perceiving the psychic reader, you know, because I had this sort of idea that he was like up high on a cloud looking down onto earth. I don't know. That's what you think when you think people are in heaven. It's a bit of an archaic. But he was saying it's like a split screen. And I'm thinking, no, that doesn't make sense to me. And he says it's like a 3D, like you're in a movie and it's like it's 3D. It's like he's in the room. As a spirit, he's in the room with those people. So he sees them like I'm just looking at all of you, but they can't see him. And he's not dead. He's just in his astral body, right? So it's just a perceptual experience. It's just a perceptual, like life is a perceptual experience. Is this making sense?
Karen, remember the other day I quoted something to you and then something that was in one of your videos, and I can't even remember who. Don't look for me where I was, look for me where I am. And then I put that little like cartoon saying, where are you? And then you gave me some information. I was telling Darcy that night I had a dream that I was washing dishes with my dad in the house that I lived in when we lived in when I was like in my early 20s. And I was not the daughter that would like run to wash the dishes after Christmas dinner. I was the one sitting, having a drink, smoking a cigarette, wanting to be in conversation while my responsible sister, you know, did the dishes. But in this dream, I was washing the dishes and my dad was drying. And I was so happy. And I was thinking, why am I so happy washing dishes? And I said, oh, because I'm with Dad. And my dad said to me, I'm always with you. You just can't see me.
There you go. Well, you can't see me with your outside eyes. You can see me in here.
Yeah.
But not, don't look for me with your outside eyes. Look for me with your inner eye. Yeah.
And I woke up and I was like, oh my God. Like I woke from that and I thought, that was him. And trying to remember this, don't, because I was really woozy and I thought, remember this, you know, and so I did.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I know. Don't look for me where I was, look for me where I am. Yeah, it's just a perceptual experience. Well, I have to say that what I do with my coaching is that unlike most teachers, I don't like people to rely on me. My work is about self-empowerment. So my work is, you know, I call my sessions reminders from home. So it's a constant reminder to come back to your inner guidance. Because when we're in the questioning mind, then we reach out for those answers. We reach out to a coach or a book or a video. But really my guidance is to come back and listen to your higher self, because your higher self is the best coach you can have. But there are times when we can't access that higher self, that higher coach, the broader perspective, the soul. So that's where we need those remindings. So that's what my coaching's about. Like I can give you the answers, like I can tap into my guides and give you the answers, but really my teaching is about getting you connected to the answers within. It's interesting because it's interesting that these sessions that I do on the Inner Sanctum, I was going to do a process that Cecil and anyway, I'll do it next time. I'll do it at the beginning. To have a really inexpensive way of coaching and teaching and talking about deliberate creation and law of attraction and being responsible for how we flow our energy and how we create our lives, and then obviously to meet and other teachers that I have on the show. But these forums are there for us to be able to share in a group, you know, like I had psychics tell me for years that I'd be standing up in front of people talking, and I was so shy. I was so shy that even when I was a child, if an adult spoke to me, like a stranger or maybe a friend of mum's or something, if they spoke directly to me, I'd just cry because I was just shy. I was just like, I was just terrified of adults. I could talk to kids. I think I was scared of them too, but anyway. And then psychics would say to me, you're going to be a teacher, you're going to speak in front, and I'm like, that's never going to happen because I'm so shy. So in my 30s, I started running a meditation program and facilitating a teacher every Monday night because I put myself out there in front of the group. I wasn't teaching, right? So it was safe for me. I was just introducing a teacher. And I would run a meditation. I would do a guided meditation and sort of channel at the time too. But I did that every Monday night because I just practiced putting myself in front of people because people kept telling me I'd be in front of people, right? And I just thought, well, I better get used to it then. And I just practiced. So these inner sanctums are like that for you. They're a way that you can practice speaking in front of people. And it's only a couple. It's interesting. When I was doing the forum all those years ago, there was probably about 100, maybe, I can't remember. There was a big crowd in the room, maybe 80, I don't know. But they would have these forums where they'd ask questions and people would stand up and take a microphone and talk about their stuff, and then the coach would say something. And I remember there was one South African woman who kept standing up, kept hogging the microphone, standing up and talking about her husband. Oh, but my husband does this, and what do I do when my husband does that? And she was very much playing the victim. And, you know, but he. And I remember getting so angry at this woman. She'd stood up for about the third or fourth time. And in my head, I was screaming, oh, shut the fuck up, you stupid bitch. I'm sick of hearing you bitch about. Like, I was just crucifying this woman in my head, right? And it was so loud. It wasn't happening verbally, which was lucky. But in my head, I was. And then we went to lunch and I was exhausted because I'd been screaming at this woman in my head. And I thought to myself, now, why am I so angry at this woman? Like, why am I so angry at? Because this reaction in me was showing something about me. It wasn't anything about her. It was something about me, right? And I sat there at lunch, just me and my thoughts, thinking, just really asking myself, why did I have such a big reaction to this woman? It wasn't because she had a South African accent and I didn't like South African accents. You know, this was the idea I was coming. It wasn't because she just kept complaining or whatever. And then it dawned on me, to stand up in front of that crowd and share personally like that would be the most terrifying thing I could ever do. Like, it just dawned on me that what she was doing, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do at that time. I could not do that. And then I thought, oh, damn, this is what I need to get over in myself. I need to get over the self-criticism, because I think criticizing her was how I criticize myself. And that screaming at her is how I scream at myself. And so I needed to get over my own self-criticism. So I didn't manage to do it during the rest of the course. Like, I did a few courses. They used to last for about 2 or 3 days. But there was one... they really hassled you to bring people along to sign up for. So they had this big introduction to the forum night, and there were like, I don't know, hundreds of people, because everyone was bringing their friends and family to hear people stand up and with their testimony of what they had been through during the forum. It was a real sales pitch night, right? So I had brought along my brother and somebody, a friend, I can't remember. But I remember I made it a point that I would stand up that night and I would share, because that was the most terrifying. And I positioned myself in the front row. And when they asked people to stand, because if you're in the front row, they pick you because you don't have to walk around. You know, it's just easy for you to stand up and be at the microphone. Oh, my God, girls, I was shaking like a leaf. Yeah. That was the most terrifying thing I ever did. I think my voice was shaking, you know, like... But I needed to do it because I had all these psychics say to me that I'm going to stand up and talk in front of people. And it was my biggest fear. And of course, now I can do it, stand on my head. But you just have to break through the fear and just do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. And really it quietened the voice in my head, because I stopped screaming at people in my head, you know, and I stopped screaming at me too and criticizing myself. Yeah, so everything that we, you know, every judgment we place on another is how we criticize ourselves. That screaming at this woman standing up and complaining about her husband constantly was just me judging myself, really. Remember to buy the book Awakened by Death, Stories of Transformation Through the Death Experience. Who's coming up in the Inner Sanctum? I have got Rich Martini coming up this month, who talks about hacking the afterlife. I love Rich because he's so, you know, like irreverent with the whole death thing. You know, he's like me. He doesn't talk about, oh, death, it's terrible. He's like hacking the afterlife. And he interviews, a bit like Elisa Medhus does, he uses psychics and mediums to interview people on the other side. You know, how did you like your physical life experience, and what did you learn, and what's it like over there, and what are you doing now? And he interviews dead people. I love it. Hacking the afterlife. And he's a hoot. He's an absolute hoot. So if you want to join us, please do, and join the Inner Sanctum. It's not expensive at all. And you get to meet me and some of my guests on the show. And we also get together with me and we talk about being a deliberate creator, how you can be more deliberate in flowing your energy so that you can be the master manifester of your life and of the new world. Thanks again for watching. Love you all. Bye for now.